So good morning, everyone. Good morning. You can take your seats. We're at time, so I think we can get started. Welcome everybody to this nice event, Stepping Up for Nature Business Leadership on Science-Based Targets. I'm Lila Karbassi. I'm with the UN Global Compact, and I also sit on the Council for SBTN and on the board of SBTI as the UN's permanent advisor. So I'm really pleased to be doing the opening for this session today because I followed the work of SBTN from the start. Back in 2019, the UN Global Compact joined the other founding members to establish SBTN. And this is a great lineup of companies here. It's very impressive. Actually, it's probably one of the best lineup of companies that I've seen in the events so far in terms of, the diversity of companies and all the brands that are represented here. And it just speaks to the fact that nature is very central to sustainable business. So over the years, SBTN has worked with a lot of dedication, has put a lot of effort to produce the guidance to equip companies to understand their impacts and dependency on nature, and all of that grounded in science. And it was never going to be easy because nature is very hard to quantify. But over time, we've seen real progress. And we now have very strong material that can help all of your companies understand how much you should do to preserve, to restore nature, and on all of our common goods. We have a first batch of companies, which are the leading companies that have set their SBTN, the science-based targets for nature, and we want to hear from them on what they learned. And across different sectors, we're seeing a lot of engagement. And the context, obviously, I mean, we've heard all week long, the context is very challenging. But I really think that nature is different because nature brings us all together. It really goes across any politics, any culture, any sort of beliefs. Everyone is for nature in some ways. So there's no controversy. We've surveyed the companies in the Global Compact. You may have heard that data point. 88% believe that the business case is stronger than ever, stronger than 5 years ago. And companies continue to do real progress on sustainability. We may not hear from it very publicly these days because there's a lot of scrutiny politically, publicly on everything that is being done. But as we saw all the different data points coming in for this General Assembly and this Climate Week, it's very clear that the work still continues no matter what. And it's very strong. And all the indicators show it. I mean, it's not perfect indicators, but for example, SBTI has seen an enormous growth over the past 18 months, more than 100%. There have been 3,000 companies that have joined the Global Compact just this year from all over the world. We just see more and more engagement, kind of similar to when we were in the period during COVID, when we thought, okay, everybody's going to move away from sustainability. And it was the opposite effect. Everybody wanted to get connected and find this safe space to share their practices and make progress on what really matters. So right now, SBTN needs you. It needs more of your commitments, more of your support, more of your experimentation on all the guidance that's been put out there. We want to learn from you. You all need to. We all want the companies to learn from each other as well. And we also need your funding, by the way. It's been working on a small budget, and it's been doing amazing work on a small budget. But, if there are donors in the room also, this is a message for you. We need your funding. So I'm hoping that everyone's going to get inspired by the examples that we see today and that you're going to join the movement. And that's it for me. I'm going to pass it over to my dear colleague Erin, who's the Executive Director for SBTN. Thank you.
Thanks, Lila, and thanks for being so committed to being part of the Advisory Council at SBTN. I am going to do just a bit of level setting. I'm presuming that most of you are quite familiar with SBTN already, so I promise that the introduction will just be brief and mostly focused on reinforcing what we're all about. So we exist to help companies go beyond climate and take responsibility for their impacts and dependencies on nature, and that means across freshwater, land, and ocean, and the biodiversity that's contained therein. The biodiversity targets are not separate targets, but are embedded across the freshwater, land, and ocean targets to ensure that the actions that are taken in those realms are supporting the protection and restoration of biodiversity. And our approach focuses on what companies can control in their value chain and their impacts on ecosystems, water, land use, which are the primary pressures on biodiversity. We help answer the question, how much is enough, of the right actions in the right places at the right time. And by doing so, enable companies to measure their contributions to a nature-positive outcome, which, as you all know, is a global whole-of-society approach that everybody needs to contribute to. And we're part of a larger system. I'm not sure if you've seen this recent graphic that One Earth put out, but taken together, these quadrants show how mandatory and voluntary efforts on both transparency and transformation fit together to drive system-level change we need across climate and nature. They illustrate how companies can move from reporting impacts to actually transforming value chains. On the left are mandatory levers, transparency through regulations like CSRD, and transformation through measures like CSDDD, which should push companies beyond disclosure into action. On the right side, you see the voluntary levers, frameworks such as GRI and TNFD for disclosure, and science-based targets for transformation. You can imagine, as a leader of SBTN, I was really happy to see an independent entity frame it this way, because this is exactly what we're aiming for. And SBTI has already begun to reshape corporate climate action, and now SBTN is doing the same for nature. We have been aligning with, we're referenced in CSRD, and we're recognized at the global policy level. For instance, the UNCCD's Business for Land initiative has actually adopted SBTN as its model for corporate action. So one of the areas of opportunity for us is connecting to the Rio Conventions and showing that companies progressing on science-based targets for nature is contributing their part to those conventions. Now we're focused on scaling impact. And I think the clicker is no longer. Perhaps somebody else can click for me. Okay, perfect. Thank you, Abby. So we're beginning to see real momentum. It is very early days for us, though. So what does that mean? Right now, we have more than 300 companies across 40 countries engaged with us through various mechanisms, and over 150 of them are actively preparing to set targets. And collectively, this represents over $5 trillion in market capitalization. What's especially exciting is the acceleration we're seeing in validation. In the coming months, we expect around 20 companies to have independently validated science-based targets for nature. Some are in the process now or have just exited the process, and you'll hear more about that in a moment. And together, representing roughly 100 targets in total set. This is the kind of early stage growth that shows that companies are stepping up and credible action for nature is gaining ground. And we are aiming for a hockey stick of adoption to get to 600 companies with science-based targets for nature by 2030. I guess it's working again, Abby, so I can take back the control. Thank you. Over the past year, I wanted to highlight some of the progress and upcoming milestones we had. On content, we launched the very first ocean targets, as well as opened public consultations on land and freshwater's version 2. Freshwater's version 2 is actually still open right now. If you're a freshwater person and haven't had a chance for that, you've got a couple more weeks. And on scaling, today we're introducing accelerated pathways, which I'm really excited about, and the companies that I've spoken to this week are nodding in enthusiasm, and that's something that I'm going to get into in a moment. We're also working with partners like TNFD and the Nature Positive Initiative to test approaches in practice. Looking ahead, we plan to release sector resources for the food and beverage sectors and the textile sectors, and we're looking to mid-2026 to deliver the full version 2 methodology, expanding coverage for land, freshwater, and providing additional target implementation resources. Ahead of that release, piloting companies will set initial land and freshwater version 2 targets alongside the ocean targets. And to scale momentum further, we'll launch a new corporate adoption campaign and begin developing place-based pilots for collective corporate action in particular landscapes where multiple companies set and act on targets together in that same place. This progress shows that first mover companies are recognizing the business case for action. And when we ask companies why they're engaging with SBTN, 4 clear business reasons come up again and again. And importantly, these are their words, not ours. The first is securing operational continuity. By assessing their impacts and dependencies on nature, companies are surfacing risks they didn't know existed, risks that could disrupt operations. As one company told us, we now know where to focus our efforts. Also, to meet rising stakeholder demand, we provide credibility. Stakeholders are asking for more than intentions. They want robust science-based action. And companies that value that SBTN is not guesswork. As one company put it, the methodology is robust, logical, and prescriptive. Third is regulation and staying ahead of regulation. Companies see SBTN as both aligned with current requirements and ambitious enough to future-proof their business. One company shared that SBTN is the best and best explained method out there to assess your impacts and dependencies. And finally, making informed decisions. SBTN provides a common framework that helps teams and suppliers make choices grounded in data. As Alpro said, we use SBTN for concrete discussions. So with that, I want to turn our attention to a specific example of GSK. And companies have exciting news across the board, and we're starting here because GSK is expanding beyond freshwater to having land targets validated. And so last year, GSK, which is a global biopharma company, if you're not familiar, had set a freshwater quantity target for its direct operations with an initial focus in the upper Godavari Basin in India. Today, they have gone further. Their land science-based targets have now been validated. These targets address no conversion of natural ecosystems, reducing their land footprint, and engaging in landscape initiatives for restoration and regeneration where it matters most. And while GSK couldn't be with us in New York, Claire Lund, the VP of Sustainability, has shared a message for us to play now.
Hi everyone, I'm Claire Lund, the Vice President of Sustainability for GSK. As a global biopharma company with science at our core, we absolutely recognise the value of having science in our approach to nature. So today we're absolutely delighted to share that our science-based land targets have been validated. And this includes sustainable sourcing of raw materials needed in the manufacture of our medicines and vaccines that our patients rely on. And at GSK, we're so proud to be part of the initial SBTN pilot. And last year, we were one of the first companies to announce our validated freshwater targets. For us, it's a really important step in the action we're taking across our value chain to reduce our impact on nature and at the same time as building business resilience. We know it's the right thing to do for people, for planet, and for long-term business success.
Great. Thank you. So next up is Arla. And we're excited to share that Arla, which is the world's 5th largest dairy company and one of Europe's largest cooperatives, today announced the validation of its materiality assessment and prioritization work using our methods for steps 1 and 2 through independent review by the Accountability Accelerator. This marks the first disclosure of an earlier validation milestone we have made available in the target setting process for companies that aren't ready to yet set targets, giving companies flexibility to be recognized where they are while generating critical insights to guide strategy. We're also excited to share today that we've got a first cohort of companies announced to set ocean targets for seafood. And that is Danish Pelagic Producers Organization, Musholm, Orkla Foods Sweden, Seatopia, and Waitrose, who have all joined a pilot to set the first ocean science-based targets for the seafood sector using our recently released guidance. Again, this work will be independently validated through the Accountability Accelerator. You'll hear from their head, Natasha, momentarily. And they are hosting our validation services, and we anticipate more participants in this pilot to be announced. We're also excited to now invite companies to apply for our land pilot, where companies will test the new version 2 land targets ahead of finalizing the methods for rollout in mid-2026. Version 2 expands the scope to a broader range of land-related impacts, reflects the latest science on ecosystem thresholds, and introduces additional flexibility and feasibility companies options. The pilot company's work will be independently validated again by the Accountability Accelerator, and you can see the application available here for the QR code. And that is a new announcement as of today. So if your company or companies that you work with are interested, please do help us spread the word. Abby, could you? So all of this is encouraging, but let's be frank. We're not here to celebrate incremental change. We're here to scale impact, and that's why I'm pleased to announce a major step forward with our accelerated pathways. These pathways allow companies to move faster, starting where they have the most traction and where nature needs it most. This is not about lowering the bar. This is about creating credible and practical ways to begin and demonstrate early results, build buy-in, and then scale up to full target coverage over time. In short, it makes it possible for companies to step up for nature action wherever they are in their journey. It's a modular target setting approach that enables companies to start where they have the most traction and where it's needed most. After completing a high-level assessment, they can narrow their scope by business unit, brand, specific environmental realms like starting with fresh water, and value chain segments like direct operations before moving on to upstream. And more information, again, is available via the QR code here. And so that brings me to my final point. Coming soon, we'll be launching a campaign for nature called Step Up for Nature. And this is a rallying call for companies everywhere to signal their next step towards science-based targets for nature wherever they are in their journey. For example, a company could state that they intend to do step 1 and submit their materiality assessment for validation by the end of the year. Or they could do steps 1 and 2 together. Or they could set targets, again, in a narrower scope, like beginning with freshwater targets or beginning with ocean targets, where it's material for their business and they're ready to get started. Each company's submission will be displayed alongside peers on an online dashboard, contributing to a transparent picture of collective ambition and progress, so that by the time of next year's Global Biodiversity Stocktake, we are aiming to demonstrate the scale of corporate ambition and progress, showing how the private sector can lead the way in delivering measurable nature-positive outcomes through science-based action. We'll share more soon, but today I invite you to register your interest on our website through this QR code. And together, we can turn complexity into clarity and clarity into action at the scale and moment demands. And with that, I'd like to hand it over to our panel moderator, Natasha Matic, the Executive Director of Accountability Accelerator, and welcome up on stage Adidas, Arla, Holcim, and Musholm. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. I hope you're all ready to hear from these amazing companies. So we're here to celebrate a little bit and recognize the tremendous work that these four companies have done and many more in the past couple of months, and hoping for scaling up and stepping up, as Erin said. My name is Natasha. As Erin said, I'm the executive director of the Accountability Accelerator, and the Accelerator is working on strengthening corporate accountability for nature and does that through grant making, orchestration, convening, and also hosting the science-based target validation service for companies. And that work makes sure that we partner and collaborate very closely with Science-Based Targets for Nature, and to ensure that whatever they're doing is accountable and transparent. So we're here today to celebrate and to recognize that leading companies like these four are stepping up for nature. They're not stepping back, and they're not being scared by what's happening in the geopolitical scene. So they're fighting against the headwinds and actually continuing to take action. So SBTN equips and guides companies to take science-based action for nature, and it defines really what's enough, where to act, and by when. So it's very concrete and easy for companies to do. This panel here today consists of members from different sectors and at different stages of target setting and validation, and it will spotlight insights for these first movers on why they're stepping up, how target setting is supporting their business strategies and objectives, and what others can do to get started. Because I'm sure there are a lot of companies in the audience here that can learn from what they've done. How many companies do we have? Good, decent amount. So it's great to see. Hopefully you'll learn something from your colleagues here. We will start with Slido. I've noticed this year everybody's having Slidos in their presentations, so we're doing that too. And one question we would like you to answer is, what would most motivate your company or companies you engage with to set science-based targets for nature? So please get on your phone the QR code here, and then we'll see what results we got. While you're doing that, I am going to introduce my esteemed panelists here. And as I said, a mix of companies from different sectors and at different stages. First here is Antonio Carrillo, Vice President of Sustainability at Holcim. Holcim is a global leader in sustainable building materials and solutions, headquartered in Switzerland. And last year, Holcim was one of the first 3 companies to set science-based targets beyond climate, and specifically a freshwater quantity target in Mexico. We then have Hanne Soendergaard. She's the third one in there, the Executive Vice President of Agriculture, Sustainability, and Communications at Arla Foods. And we heard from Erin about Arla Foods. Arla Foods is a global dairy cooperative with 8,000 farmer owners across Europe. And as we've just heard, Arla has just validated its materiality assessment and prioritization work through SBTN. Congratulations, Hanne. Teis Volstrup. Hello, Teis. I made sure that I pronounced his name right. He's the head of public affairs and communication at Musholm. Musholm is a Danish agriculture company specializing in trout farming, and it has assessed and prioritized its nature impacts and dependencies using SBTN's methods, with independent validation planned through the Accountability Accelerator right now. And last but not least is Sigrid Buehrle, who is the SVP Sustainability and ESG at Adidas. Adidas, I'm sure everybody knows, and if we knew, we would have been all wearing Adidas shoes right now, but you are doing it, so it's great to see. Adidas is headquartered in Germany and is one of the world's largest sportswear manufacturers, and has assessed and prioritized its nature impacts and dependencies using SBTN methods, and it's right now planning validation through the Accountability Accelerator. So amazing to have you all here, and looking forward to hearing what you have to say. I have a list of questions. Let's just see what's happening here on our poll. What would motivate your company? Long-term value creation, risk reduction, supply chain resilience. So I'd love to hear some of your thoughts as I ask you questions. Question for all of you to start with. What made your company decide to step up for nature?
Should I go?
Why don't you start?
Yeah.
Yes.
Look, I think I'm trying to be as inspiring as possible, but the truth is that we were hearing the other day on all the panels, the company struggling to find a business case for nature. In our case, it was pretty simple, to be quite honest. Number one, as leading company in building materials, nature is a resource of raw materials. When it comes to produce, that super glue that builds cities like concrete or aggregates and all those essential materials to basically build the society as we know it today. And there is a heritage of many years and decades and regulations in order on how to do so, rehabilitation of quarries, etc., etc. Surprisingly enough, our target is actually on water and fresh water, because water is also a key resource to run our operations and to cool down processes. We cannot basically operate without these resources. So it was a no-brainer from one of those basically reasons you were asking: supply chain engagement, risk, reputation, long-term value creation. I think in our case, we tackled it all. There was also a lot of interest by investors and finance community, as I think the tagline last year was "Nature is the new climate." It's always a bit tricky to compare the two topics, but the truth is that it also came across as a natural step. Holcim was the first company within the sector that set science-based target initiative net zero targets in 2020 around the COVID year, and after that a lot of our peers in the industry has followed. So also a bit of a responsibility of peer engagement and being at the forefront of having this rigor. So all overall, it really made all the sense, and we're very proud of having been one of those first companies. It's a privilege. We will also be we're aiming to set new targets already this year, to be I guess revealed by the end of the year. So that's a little bit why we did it.
Thank you. Sigrid, go ahead, please.
Yes, maybe I can go next. For Adidas, stepping up for nature was a very strategic business decision. We are fully aware that climate and nature, both of them, are critical impacts on our business, and we are depending on all of them, and we do impact them. So we already, when we set up our sustainability strategy, we as well understand that we cannot look into climate in isolation. We have embedded climate next to nature, next to circularity and human rights into a really holistic sustainability strategy, because we understand there's risk to our business, right? So we need to better understand the risk so that we can mitigate, that we can adapt, and that we as well can make our company just more resilient in the future. Our industries, if we talk about textile and sporting goods, then this industry is heavily depending on water, right? We need water to grow the fibers. We need water because all of the production, the processes are heavily using water and energy. So we definitely understand that we need to better understand the risk and then as well identify the actions. At the same time, we are a sports company, so we as well want to consider our communities, athletes, consumers, and we want to ensure there's a healthy environment as well in the future for all of us to play sports. So we need to ensure as well that we protect nature. And stepping up for nature is, I would say, stepping up for business and stepping up for our future as well.
Great point. Thank you very much. That is definitely, nature is part of all of our daily life and business development. So great. Thank you so much, Sigrid. Hanne, please go ahead.
Yes. So we are owned by farmers. In Arla. So I guess we started working with sustainability many years ago, and I guess for us, getting engaged with SBTN, we have a lot of experience in working with SBTI. And I think what it gives us is a science-based way of setting ambition, which I think is super important for farmers because they need to understand that the action that they take is part of something that's going to be here in the long run. So they need something to lean up against. That means that the action that they take every day is meaningful, and they know that that will future-proof their farm. So what we are hoping, and I can only echo what was said earlier for those that are helping to fund SBTN, we are hoping that SBTN can play a similar role, which is why we are leaning into it. That it could create that platform for us to give some long-term direction for our farmers, but also, I suppose, a platform for us to collaborate across the value chain. Because we are dependent on working with our customers also on this journey. When we've worked with climate, we've seen what it can enable. We have a program, maybe we come back and talk about that, where we work with customers. And I think when we are all aligned around science-based targets, whether that's for climate or nature, it just takes that ambiguity away. And you can talk about, okay, how do we get there? So I think collaboration across the value chain has been a key reason for us to lean into SBTN
So
as well.
stakeholder engagement basically is much easier because you have a
100%.
great. Thank you. Teis, please go ahead.
So we are fish farmers and we are heavily dependent on nature and we are acting in nature. So that's as basic as it was for us to see. We need to take action. We need to be aware what is our impact actually and how can we credibly say what our impact would be. We will face criticism. We will have sometimes risk of new regulation coming. We would have campaigns against us. If you're a food producer out in nature, you will have to be able to stand up for why you're doing this and how you're doing it and find a way to give transparency. So for us, there will be a lot of risk reducing in it, of course. But in our DNA as fish farmers would be the sense of nature. So the location we have, example in the sea, was chosen by the founder of the business, who was actively fishing sea trout. So he wanted to choose a place where he knew that nature gave the best conditions for a wild sea trout to exist. That gives a responsibility to us to say that we need to preserve this area. So when we are farming our rainbow trout, they have to have a very good life in a very good marine area. And we cannot be the one responsible for destroying that. That would be bad for our business. You know, we need good conditions in the water for the fish, but it would also make a very short-term business case if we look into that. And we also have, of course, we have land-based freshwater fish farming as well, and we're in the sea. And we need to find a tool that we can look into the whole aspect of our own value chain, and again, also the full value chain that we have and all our partners upstream as well. We need to find a good way to communicate with them and know that we can say, data-driven, scientifically based, what is our impact, and then we know where to act, because that's the thing. You know, we have a lot of good intentions, so if it's in our DNA to take care of nature, to look into nature, we can do a lot of good-hearted things here and there and there and there, but we want to make sure that we use our resources right and do something that also our fish farmers, everybody like taking care of fish every day can see. It makes sense that also that I'm here, that we go into this big work because we are giving some perspective long term, that we know that we can actually act and do nature positive actions.
Great, thank you very much. And Teis, you and I spoke earlier and you said something important. You said this work is only strong if we promote it and if we get others to step up. Can you say a couple of words about that?
Like, I will be the most happy poster boy for SBTN ever, because it is so important that we speak up about this. If we don't get the awareness that this framework exists and we don't get it spread out to more companies that make it something that we use and that we look into how credible as companies are we, then why should decision makers go and take it into account? Why should the public go and say that this is a credible way to look into it? We need to find some good trustworthy tools of transparency and to guide action, and we do all we can with all the risk it is to step out and say we try to take action on this. We want to promote it. The more value SBTN will get.
Thank you. Hanne, you also just publicly disclosed. Can you tell us a little bit from your perspective what that is doing for you internally as a company? Why is it important to publicly disclose, and also what you're hoping in the kind of broader sector, what impact this will have?
Yes, I think just one reflection. It's probably not by accident that you have two Danes on this planet. It's also probably not by accident you have two people wearing Adidas shoes.
Yes, there you go.
But you know, the Nordics, for those of you that are not so close to Northern Europe, it has some excellent condition for agriculture and I think also fisheries, but also a group of people like us that are very passionate about our nature. So I guess we need to manage both in a small space. So that's a little bit where we are. Yeah. But I think there is something about the theory of change here. You know, if we're perfectly honest, I think what's happened with climate and SBTI, the belief was that if we get a few companies to lead, the rest will follow. That's not really happened, I think. And I think here, therefore, I would also say that one of the things that we are also very happy to be advertising SBTN, but we will also be very happy to sort of give feedback to say, let's keep it as simple as we can. Let's get as many companies into this as we can. I think that's super important because otherwise we are going to be left with those few and those many that are not part of it. So I think definitely I think that's important.
Great, thank you. Let's move a little bit to how this work has influenced your business strategy. Sigrid, maybe you can tell us a little bit more about how this has influenced your priorities and strategy, business strategy overall, and then Antonio, you can follow.
Yes. So perhaps first of all, you know, how did we get the clarity? We did our double materiality assessment last year. We as well disclosed all of the results in our annual report, really to help us and sometimes as well to validate, right? To help validate where nature is intersecting with our business, right? Where we are impacting nature, but where as well changes in land use, deforestation, and water scarcity would be influencing us, right? So we looked at those intersections and we identified its biodiversity, right? Because of the natural fibers that we are using, and its water, because of, again, natural fibers need water, our processes production need water, right? So that was our first step of assessment. And then we looked at identifying the hotspots, right? And then as well allowing us to prioritize the topics. And that's where we then took the opportunity to prioritize then as well exactly those raw materials. For us, cotton and leather is why play a really big role. So we really identified those materials as the hotspots. And we as well looked at freshwater as one of the key areas to look at. But then, of course, right, and we, so far, as you mentioned, we went through step 1 and 2, right? So we are not at the end yet. We have not set targets yet, right? And that's where then we need to look into how does it influence our business strategy now. So if we really want to go deeper into cotton and into leather, you have to as well understand your supply chain, right? And the supply chain that we are looking at in textiles and footwear is super complex, right? I mean, it's so great to hear that you are actually working directly with farmers. That's fantastic. We don't, right? We don't. We buy product, right? We give frameworks. We tell exactly what the do's and the don'ts. So we influence our suppliers. But there's producers tier 1. Then we have material producers. Then we have yarn spinners. And then we have raw material, right? So we do not know at this moment really where the cotton is grown that we are using, right? So whilst we work now very closely with some of the material certifiers, because as an Adidas, as one company, we cannot solve that problem, right? It really needs to be working with stakeholders together. So on cotton, we work with BCI together, right? We hopefully get to a country of origin. traceability by the end of this year, but that's not good enough, right? We need to go to a water basin level. So there still is work to be done. Same for leather, right? We buy the hides, right? Through our suppliers, but where's the cattle grown? We don't know. So that's where we work with a leather working group together, right? And ideally as well in alignment with the dairy industry, with the meat industry, because again, we don't want to solve a problem for one company or one industry. We all together need to work on finding those solutions. So for us, there's work to be done still, right? We need to get really close to understanding the water basin level, and only then, right, we as well understand our impact, and then we as well can set clear targets here. At the same time, though, own operations is different, right? So we better know where our facilities are, and we can earlier start with setting targets. And water is anyway a key element of our strategy. So we had so far only more global water targets, right? We look at water consumption, we look at chemicals, we look at recycling water, but more on a global level. And now as well, we're changing our strategy. We're updating our water targets. We go more local. We really need to come up with localized water targets, understanding the stress level. So it's work to be done. We need as well our suppliers. We need them to step up to as well understand the problem. So again, not easy, and we definitely are not there. It's a journey, but SBTN helps us to really go through that journey as well in a science-based way. So we really appreciate that, because it really helps us and complements the actions and the things we already do.
Wonderful, thank you. Tonya, how about you?
Yeah, I think science-based target for nature has helped us to give more credibility to an existing strategy. We always discuss about how you basically integrate nature into a business strategy, and to me there are two very clear KPIs to monitor companies. One is it part of the equity story? Is it part of the value proposition to shareholders, especially if they are listed companies? Water has been freshwater withdrawal reductions, fundamental part of this. And is it linked to the compensation of the executives? And I think that's a game changer. We have freshwater withdrawal reductions as a group linked to the compensation of our executive committee and senior leaders. So every single of the P&L leaders in the organization basically need to work on CapEx plans, OpEx plans, and to really mingle it with the financial and operational business plans of every single operation. I think water has always been a topic, but since we made that step, the rigor where actions that actually implemented to execute those reductions took a different level. We have is an element that is a discussion at any single country strategy reviews. We are present in a number of countries. Everyone has basically clear plans, clear different projects. It's very material also how you tackle water in country A versus country B, and that is really what has actually triggered the kick. One of the things that we've also seen is with our customers and communities bringing actions into water. Let me give you the example. I was recently visiting our operations in Ecuador. We had a ready mix plant, it's Planta Pascuales, that is actually almost net positive in water. We recycle water from the industries around. There's a rainwater harvesting facility to the point that we can run that operation with no water consumption from the tap. Authorities were even kind of questioning there was something wrong in the operations, and this actually triggered a lot of best practices within our operations in other countries. So I think to your point, Erin, before, it's also about bringing action and impact into motion, and that's a little bit where we are at thanks to this level of integration in the governance model of the company.
Amazing. It's just fascinating for me to hear how all these different sectors are really using science-based targets in such different ways, but kind of in a very helping all of you get to the next level within your organizations to dig deeper and find out where you are and what needs to be done. Teis, you have a very interesting learnings from doing this process in terms of how it influences your strategy. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
We got a real aha moment that has changed our business strategy totally. So we would have an old business idea of maybe moving some production to another site, or at least we needed to do a big renovation of a land-based fish farming facility. So when we had to go all through this work and we had to rank our different sites, how valuable would they be in our business and so on, it was interesting to say what value does this site really have for us? And of course, in that, we needed to rethink. We need to renovate this place. For that, we needed to think then better about high impact commodities. How much material, new raw material would we need in a construction with a lot of concrete and so on to build this facility? You know, that stressed us a little bit. So let's say that we could take the old business idea, take this production, move it to the open waters, out in the open sea. That would, for us, be a good business case. It would fit much more the original idea. And as well, we could see that the nutritional load that we would impact nature on, instead of going to the vulnerable near coastal waters, it would go in the more robust marine area. Good, we thought that would be an easy go. We talked with the Danish authorities and they say, no, that's not possible. Current Danish regulation doesn't allow this. And we were about to dismiss the case. And then, consulting the ocean hub of SBTN, they said, obviously, you have to serve nature in this. You don't have to serve current Danish regulations. So, keep this idea, go on an engagement path. So you can change this. So if you mean that this is good for your business and it has, like from the analysis it goes, it will be a positive upside for nature, then go on. And within a year, it has actually changed. So we, of course, had to engage with the whole sector, other actors in it, NGOs. We had to go and speak up about it. And of course, it was easier saying that it's a new knowledge that we have because we were looking into SBTN. And now, recent political agreement with the government and 10 out of 12 parties has agreed that they will look into making this possible. Within 1 year, we would have dismissed the idea. That would have been a shame for our business plan. It would have been a shame for nature, and has really changed everything. That is thanks to SBTN. So it's a very concrete example of us changing our business strategy and choosing to go in and prioritize this engagement path. So I hope that can inspire for this can give some motivation to go out and actually go on engagement path too.
Great, thank you. Hanne, go ahead. And if you can also speak a little bit about how engaging with SBTN helped kind of build on what you're already doing,
Yes.
whether it's CSRD and any other requirements, reporting, if you can touch on that as well.
Yes, and if I can just say the government. Sorry, can you hear me here now? The government that you're referring to is not the easiest government, so well done. I think because we are close to farmers, we have to all times think long term, because we can't kind of change direction. So this needs to be a long term game. So and you know, you can, when you are layering things on top for a farmer, there is only one farm. So you know, it's not like a farmer will say, okay, today I'm doing climate, tomorrow I'm doing nature. You know, it's one plan. Yeah. So I guess we need to integrate it into our programs. And I think what SBTN helps us with is, number one, is make sure that we focus on the right pressures of our business. So ensuring that we have the right focus when we set out on that journey where we are working with our farmers. And then secondly, I guess what SBTN is helping with is then also localizing that. And I have to say there, just for everyone, focus on your data. You know, I think the plan is as good as the data is. So I think data is a big thing here. And because we collect a lot of data from farmers already, we have a lot of that data. But I think what we also need here is data about the local areas that we are part of, and robust data there. So there's a big data game here. But I think what it's helped us to do is then number two is to understand the local areas and where that pressure that our business has is most critical. And we're working against or across 7 countries, owned by farmers across 7 countries. It can easily become very political if you have to do one thing in one country and another thing in another. So there's something there that we need to manage for. I think when it comes to CSRD, we are based in Europe. It's an obligation, as was talked about earlier. And I guess it helps. You know, I'm not really a big believer in those kind of compliance schemes, but you have to do it. But I guess what this does is it helps. What SBTN helps with is to operationalize and actually think about what's the strategy and action you want to take so that it doesn't become a compliance game. Yeah. But they connect completely. So I guess for us, it's a lot about trust. It's a lot about trust from our farmers that we know what we're doing. It's science-based, it's data-based, it's a long haul, they can lean into it. It's trust from our customers that when we say that here is a program, we're building this into our program, that you know, it's science-based and so on. So I think it is a trust thing that SBTN can help us with.
Yes, I think it's important. And we work on the strengthening the whole accountability ecosystem from the Accelerator side. And that's why we think supporting organizations that can provide some of this data to companies is so important. So the whole ecosystem could be feeding companies to make life easier, but also nudge and push them a little bit in this process. And we have to look at accountability as a set of carrots and sticks, so to speak, and strengthen the whole ecosystem. I wanted to ask you, Hanne mentioned a little bit about local engagement. You've done a lot of work in Mexico. I know you've had challenges and opportunities there. Can you briefly tell us a little bit about that? We only have a few more minutes.
Yeah. I think to put things in context, we have this obviously completed the 3rd step, which is the validated target in that particular basin in Mexico. And how this works is basically in your 1st step, you basically get confirmation whether that topic is on all material, I think what you were referring before. The 2nd step basically gives you also the direction of prioritization here and there. And the 3rd step is actually getting the target validated, and for that you need the hydrological model. And that is really important when you basically engage with that particular community that is using that basin where you are basically extracting fresh water, whether there's a local model or not. And that's a bit one of the challenges, but also opportunities. And I invite you all that are exploring this 3rd step and validated targets to go for it, because in this particular case, what we found is there was no local awareness, there was no local model. We had to go for the global model, and we set the target that way. That's the same discussion we're having with other communities in other basins. So that really helps also in the process to understand, to prioritize, to anticipate whether local models will need to be developed. And now what we see in the ground is really an excited community, supply chain, those that were not aware of the challenge, of the actions, of the levers to basically get more efficient in the consumption of fresh water, are all working towards that. Plants are obviously already working on the investments needed for these efficiencies to be materialized. And yes, hitting the target eventually brings also to that particular community a feeling of proudness of those companies operating and basically
and that's
making use
why
of
also
that resource.
validation setting is very important, but validating targets is so important because you build trust with the communities. It gives you kind of the opportunity to say these targets have been validated by a third party, and they can be trusted, right? So thank you. Do we have 5 minutes for the?
Yeah, while you were doing that, the team went ahead and ran a Slido for Q&A.
Okay, Q&A. So I will ask a couple of questions here for the panel, and maybe we can anybody can start. Sigrid, you can start. Where do you see biggest opportunities for business value as you progress with target setting?
Well, I believe first of all, as well as I explained, we started with the first two phases of assessment and prioritization without actually knowing all of the data, right? So I think as well it's really important, don't wait, right? Don't wait until you have the perfect data sets. Data are key, but the good thing is about the SBTN process, it actually guides you. It takes you on a journey. It guides you to find out and to explore. So my recommendation is don't wait too long, right? And it's not an additional layer of complexity where you're then like, okay, it's adding just another layer on top. The good thing is it complements. It complements as well the activations, the actions that you have anyways in your business. For us, for example, we committed to be deforestation free with our key materials until 2030, right? We were bold, saying it, committing it, without knowing yet how we get there, right? So, and we're doing good with it. We called out a recycled polyester moonshot. Now we're at 99.3% recycled polyester. Again, when you start those journeys, you might not have all of the solutions, but the process guides you, right? And I really appreciate as well the Accountability Accelerator support, because even if you're committed, if you build up internal resources, we still really appreciate as well the external support for us on that journey. So just as well, I want to just as well, let you know, get it started and don't wait for the moment you have all the data. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Hanne, would you like to say?
Yeah, I think the faster we can get companies across the value chains on board here, I think that's where the value will come, because that helps us to collaborate. So a platform of collaboration, I think, for us would be the big one. And then I'd echo that the first couple of steps, completing those, you get an understanding of where your priorities should be, and then you can actually start acting. Yeah, and we do that also. We've just announced a couple of weeks ago that we have a huge area with 30 farms in the middle of Denmark where they've started working together on how do they solve for all the things in one big plan, biodiversity, nitrate, everything, because it's not one thing. So I think it is I would say collaboration, and you can start acting along the way.
Wonderful. Thank you, Teis.
Yeah, it's a bit of a combination of that question and also what is here. So why should we choose this? I mean, for us, it's really the umbrella that connects all the dots from whatever we could have of kind of revision we need to give for the Danish authorities, or all the own environmental measures that we do, or our certifications, everything that we do that can be connected under this, because it's all relevant in the science-based target for nature framework. And then we can use it, as we saw earlier, it's a transformative thing. It calls for action. And we have only been more excited about creating action from this, and because it's credible action. It's action that we can say will matter, and it will matter both for our business, but also for nature. That is important. And also here about the C-suite, it's easy to get the board on board. It's easy to get the whole company on board because of this. It's so easy to see that we have a lot of data, and we thought we knew all. We are very data-driven, and we have learned a lot. So when we went into it, we thought maybe it would be easier than it was. But it was easy enough because it made sense every time the challenges would appear. And for us, that has been a very, very maturing journey for us. And we're a small, medium-sized company. So we also want to prove that we can raise the bar on this. We needed to, of course, enroll with external counseling, and we needed to learn a lot on the way. But it makes sense, because if we can raise the bar and show what is possible within our sector, then hopefully it will be a competitive measurement point that will help our business in the long run as well. Such a thing, it's very good for the C-suite as well.
Thank you all. I'm so sorry. I have one more question for Erin, but we're going to have to finish up soon because we're running out of time. Erin, one of the questions for you that came in, with so many frameworks out there, why SBTN? Why do you recommend companies?
Well, Teis just kind of did my job for me. Thank you for that. That was not planted. So appreciate it deeply. hearing directly from the companies about the reasons for value, it's wonderful to hear that we're accomplishing what we're looking to in terms of you being essentially our customer. Our ultimate customer is nature. And so consistent with that, equipping companies to be taking enough of the right action is the reason for science-based targets, and doing that in a replicable, transparent way so that there can be credibility and comparability, and that we can essentially add up. And I think our colleagues at World Benchmarking Alliance did a fascinating check on the efficacy of quantitative targets. And SBTs, by definition, are measurable, actionable, and time-bound. And only 1% of companies that don't have quantitative targets make progress, while 60% of companies that do have quantitative targets make significant progress. So we don't in any way try to paint ourselves as being the silver bullet or the panacea for solving and stopping nature loss, but an incredible part of the solution and doing our part for that collective goal. So thank you all for your time today.
Thank you so much.